Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. I'm excited today because today we want to ramble for a good 10 minutes or more about the similarities between Resident Evil Village and Bram Stoker's Dracula. And then we mean the original source material, of course, so the original book from 1879. David and I both have read through the OG Dracula. I did it last year and I think you did it a couple of years ago, right David?
Yes, I've read it on a plane trip, and it's definitely one of my favorite books all time. And I can recommend it to anyone who's interested in reading and in horror stories.
Absolutely, and if you have seen the trailer of Resident Evil 8, you can really see that they kind of take inspiration from that whole cultural phenomenon that is Dracula. And we really want to discuss that and see the connections today a little bit more. However, before we get to Dracula, we need to dive also a little deeper into the historical significance of the region in which Dracula the book takes place, and thus Resident Evil 8 as well. Because they both take place into this mountainous Transylvanian region, so we think it's probably in Romania or in Moldavia. That's what we kind of derive from the currency that they use in the game. So they use the lei, which is like a Moldavian or Romanian currency. The castle inside the game, so Castle Dimitrescu, the big castle that we can see in every trailer, is actually derived from a real castle in Romania, and that is called Palace Castle. I hope my pronunciation is good there. And we can really see, so this is Palace Castle, that it really takes inspiration from this kind of medieval castle. So it has the same kind of clock tower structure, and then the same kind of architecture a little bit. And you really can see that at this backdrop against this snowy environment, it looks a lot like the actual castle in Romania. And it's probably that Capcom's designers have taken inspiration from this castle itself. And contrary to popular belief, this was not actually Dracula's castle. In fact, Dracula's castle is an hour away from Palace Castle, on which it is based. Here's Castle Bran. That's where Vlad the Impaler was actually at, the historical Dracula. And if you drive 1 hour, you can actually get to that Palace Castle over here. However, it's very interesting that because there are two of these big, significant castles in this region, there's actually something very interesting that could happen in the game. And what is that, David?
Yes, actually, I was thinking when I was looking at the map, we're actually seeing two castles in the Resident Evil Village map. And the second one, called the Stronghold on the map, could actually be designed as Bran Castle. So we can actually maybe see Dracula's real castle back into the game. But we haven't seen anything from that, and we probably won't see it in a while, or maybe not even into the game itself.
That's actually super interesting that we can visit maybe Dracula's castle in the game, or like an inspiration of Dracula's castle. So now that we have looked briefly at the location of the game and at the historical Dracula, let's take a closer look at the connections between Resident Evil 8 and the fictional Dracula from Bram Stoker's original book, because there are indeed some parallels between the two. The main character of the book, if you can call him the main character, his name is Jonathan Harker. He is visiting Dracula's castle, and in Dracula's castle, at first he is not really sure why he's there. He thinks he is being invited to help Dracula gain some property in England. However, he quickly discovers that the actual goal of Dracula is much more different. He actually wants to go to Europe, and he wants to feast on other people. And during his stay in that castle, he encounters various characters, and one of those are the brides of Dracula. So they are known as the Weird Sisters in the book. We can also see it in the Resident Evil 8 trailer. So they are probably these hooded ladies that are referenced as the daughters of Lady Dimitrescu, and they are known in the book for morphing into different shapes. So I can read this little quote of the book. This is when Jonathan Harker, the main character from the book, is lying. I think he's lying on a couch, and he's starting to get hypnotized by some dust speckles that he sees outside of the window. And then he thinks, quote, "I began to notice that there were some little quaint specks floating in the rays of the moonlight. They were like the tiniest grains of dust, and they whirled round and gathered in clusters in a nebulous sort of way. I watched them with a sense of soothing, and a sort of calm stole over me. The phantom shapes, which were becoming gradually materialized from the moonbeams, were those of the 3 ghostly women to whom I was doomed." End quote. So, in the book, he describes that these women can materialize from dust specks. Now, in the trailer of Resident Evil, we can see that they actually materialize from insects, but it's really the same principle. So that's also a very strong connection with the Dracula source material. And it really shows that for this game, Capcom took inspiration from Dracula. And also another thing is that in the movie Brides of Dracula, there's also a depiction of these weird sisters of Dracula's brides, as we can see over here. And we can also see that they bear some similarities with the other characters in Resident Evil 8. So for example, with Lady Dimitrescu, they have sort of like the same kind of robe over here. They have the same kind of, how do you call it, like seductive traits. So in the book, they're really characterized by their seducing nature. So they seduce Jonathan as well in the book. So that's already, those are already some connections that we can make. However, that's still not the only connection with Dracula, because in the trailer of Resident Evil 8, we can also see a character from which we believe his name is Heisenberg. Regarding Heisenberg, what are the connections between Heisenberg and Dracula, the source material, the book?
Yeah, we of course saw Heisenberg in the trailer, and he really physically resembles the Van Helsing character that's known in the book and the movies and other fiction. And they both have many similarities. They're both men of science. In the game, Heisenberg has a factory and he can levitate stuff. They're both scholars. Could very well be that Heisenberg is very much inspired by Van Helsing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because in the book, they also describe him. They describe him as, quote, "a man of medium height, strongly built, with his shoulders set back over a broad, deep chest and a neck well balanced on the trunk. The head is noble, well-sized, broad and large behind the ears." Unquote. So it's really, the character Heisenberg in Resident Evil 8 is sort of like an amalgamation, a mix of different characters of the Dracula culture, because he kind of also resembles Gary Oldman's version of Dracula in the 1992 movie Dracula, as we can see here. Especially these sunglasses over here, kind of like the facial hair traits, and then of course the longer hair over here, and of course the fancy outfit with the hat and with the coat and everything. So it's kind of like an amalgamation, I would say, of different characters of Dracula's past. And then also, which is another similarity between Heisenberg and Dracula himself, is that it appears that he can control wolves. Correct, David?
Werewolves, maybe. It looks like he might be a werewolf himself, and we've seen wolf-like enemies in the trailer, and it's definitely something that could be true, but it isn't confirmed yet. But it could be that Heisenberg is controlling these wolves and is a werewolf himself.
Yeah, so the right now the speculation is that Heisenberg is this character that we see in the trailer, so the giant with the hammer, and that he can transform into this giant, and that he is able to control the smaller werewolves. In the Dracula book, Dracula himself is actually described as being able to control wolves. So that is also a small thing that both properties have in common together. And I think that's about it for our coverage of the history of Dracula and the connection with Resident Evil 7. And I would like to say it's clearly obvious that the game takes inspiration from Bram Stoker's original novel, and I love that. Because Resident Evil has always approached horror settings from different angles, and to see one that is directly tied to one of the significant classic horror stories feels like it's coming full circle. And thank you so much for watching, and please support us by giving us a like and subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us as we are still a small YouTube channel. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.